Black Beauty by Anna Sewell. Chapter 1. My Early Years. The first place that I can remember is a large field with a little wood at the top, where I lived with my mother and some other horses. A small river ran along the bottom of the field. If I stood at the gate to the field, I could see my owner's house next to a road. The owner, Farmer Gray, was a good man. He gave us healthy food, and he spoke to us as kindly as he spoke to his children. There were other young horses in the field with me, but I was the youngest. I used to run with them and have great fun. We used to have races, and when the biggest horses got too excited, they kicked, bit the horses next to them. One day, when my mother saw what was happening, she called me over to her. "Listen to me. The horses in this field are all good horses, but they are not all like us. I don't think you have ever seen me bite or kick anyone. I hope that you'll grow up to be gentle and good. Never bite or kick, even when you are just playing a game." I have never forgotten my mother's advice. I grew into a tall, strong horse with a black coat, with one white foot and a white star on my head. I soon learned how to pull a carriage. Sometimes I pulled the carriage with my mother, and she helped me to learn what to do. "The harder you work, the kinder people will be to you," my mother explained one day. "I hope you find a good owner. However, there are many kinds of men. Some are as good as our owner, but some are bad. We never know who might buy us. Sometimes people don't understand what a horse needs." I found out that my mother's words were very true. When I was older, Farmer Gray decided to sell me to a new owner. His name was Squire Gordon, and he lived in a big house in a place called Birtwick Park. It was a lovely place to live in, with large fields and comfortable stables. Squire Gordon had a kind helper called John Manley, who looked after me, and I soon became good friends with the other horses in the stables. One was a small fat horse called Merrylegs. He was a jolly, gentle horse who was always making people laugh because of the way he walked. He carried the young children of the family. Another was Ginger, a tall horse with a sad face. Merrylegs told me that Ginger often bit or kicked because people were not nice to her in the past. "Squire Gordon's children used to bring me apples and nice things to eat," said Merrylegs. "But when they knew that Ginger bit people, they became frightened, and now they don't come to visit us horses any more. However, if people are kind to her, she'll soon learn to stop biting," he explained. The next day, Squire Gordon took me out around Birtwick Park. "How is your new horse?" asked his wife when we returned. "He is a perfect horse," he said. "What shall we call him?" "He is very handsome," his wife said. "Why don't we call him Black Beauty?" "Yes, I like that," said Squire Gordon. And that is how I got my name. On some days, I worked with Ginger, pulling carriages. Although Merrylegs said that Ginger was sometimes bad-tempered, I found that she was thoughtful. She always worked hard, so that I didn't have to pull the carriage any more than she did. We soon became good friends. One day, when I was working with Ginger, she told me about the people she worked with in the past. None of them was kind, and some of them were often cruel. She decided that she did not like people and did not want to do what they asked her to. The problem was that some people hit her hard when she refused to do what they wanted. That was when she started to kick and bite people. Then they wanted to sell her, and finally she arrived at Squire Gordon's. However, as time passed, Ginger understood that John and Squire Gordon were different from her other owners. They were always kind and gentle with their horses, and she was happy to do what they asked, most of the time. Then one day, she saw something that showed her that some people could be good. Squire Gordon was riding her when they passed a man who worked for Squire Gordon. The man was angry with his horse and hit it hard to make it go faster. Squire Gordon did not like this. "I've never seen a man who was so unkind to a horse," he cried. "No horse will do what you want by hurting it. The people who work for me must understand that a horse is not a machine." Ginger now began to respect Squire Gordon. After this, she decided she would not bite or kick people any more. "She'll be as good as Black Beauty soon," said John. "All she needed was for people to be kind to her." One day, I was surprised when John brought Merrylegs back to the stable and said, "Don't do that again, Merrylegs, or you'll be in trouble." "What did you do?" I asked him. I was very surprised, because Merrylegs always behaved so well. "Oh, I didn't do much," said Merrylegs. "I wanted to give the boys a lesson, so I threw them on the ground." "What?" I said, very surprised. "But you were always so careful with the children." "Of course I am," he said. "I would never hurt the girls or the little children, but the older boys need a lesson sometimes," he continued. "They think that a horse is like a machine, which can continue for hours without a rest. They never think that I can feel tired. So I stopped. When I did not continue, they hit me with a stick. Then I threw them off. They need to learn how a horse feels." "Why didn't you kick them?" said Ginger. "No, I would never do that. I threw them off because I knew it would not hurt them. If I kicked the children, I would be sold to some unkind person who would hit me all the time. We must always remember what a good place we live in. Chapter 2. Difficult Journeys. One morning, and as soon as he said this, a big tree suddenly fell across the road in front of us with a loud crash. "That was close," said Jim. Then we heard a man shout from the other side of the bridge. "Stop!" he called. "I see," John replied. "Thank you." We saw the gates of Birtwick Park. I was very pleased to be home and enjoyed my evening food when another horse arrived. His young rider smoked a cigarette while his horse was brushed. I don't know how long I slept or what time it was when I woke up. I felt uncomfortable, although I did not know why. I heard Ginger coughing, and I saw that the air was filled with smoke. Then I knew that there was a fire. A man appeared with a... What would happen to us? We did not want to go anywhere. Then John arrived. "Come on, my beautiful horses. Wake up, please. It's time to go." He spoke softly and was so gentle with me that I stopped feeling frightened. I slowly followed him out of the building and away from the fire. When I saw that I was safe, I called out for the other horses to leave. Ginger later told me that I had saved her. By now, the fire was bigger, and just as John led Ginger away from the fire, the building collapsed. Finally, some firefighters arrived to try to put out the fire. After many hours, the fire was no more. When we arrived at the house of Squire Gordon's friends the next evening, everyone was talking to John. "It is one of the hardest things in the world to move horses when there is a fire," said Squire Gordon's friend. "What you did to help them was incredible." Chapter 3. Joe Green's Lesson. When we returned to Birtwick Park, we heard that John was to have a new helper. His name was Joe Green, and he was 14 years old. "Are you sure you don't need someone who is older than this?" asked Squire Gordon. "No, sir," said John. "Joe is small, but he wants to learn, and he is a hard worker. I was the same age when I started here. I had no family, but you looked after me as well as any parent. Now I live here with a good job and a good living. It is only right that I do the same to this new boy, Joe Green." In the next few weeks, Joe learned to sweep the floor, bring in the food, and wash the carriages. He was too small to brush Ginger or me, so he practiced on Merrylegs. He was a happy boy who was always singing. However, it was not always a happy time. One event happened that stopped Joe singing for some time. John woke me up when it was still dark one morning. Almost before I could open my eyes, he was riding me past the house. Cried John, and he rode me as quickly as he could through the village and out along the river. We went through another village, through a dark wood. John knocked loudly on the doctor's door. "Mrs. Gordon is very ill. You must come now," said John, passing the doctor the note. "I will come at once, but I have a problem. My son has taken my horse, and I do not have another." I had almost no energy when we finally arrived back at Birtwick Park. The doctor ran into the house, and young Joe took me inside. All my hair was wet, and I felt so hot. Poor Joe was young, and he did not know what to do. A horse who has just warm blanket on me because I was hot, and then he gave me cold water to drink before he went away and left me alone in the stable. I began to feel very cold. All my body ached. I lay down and tried to sleep. When I woke, although I was ill, I was happy to hear that she was well again. Young Joe Green was very unhappy. He knew that I was ill because he did the wrong things that night. Luckily, I became well again in a few days, but I knew that John was angry with Joe. A few weeks later, Joe took me out to take a message to a neighbour. On the way home, we passed a carriage that was full of heavy metal bars. It was taking them to a nearby factory. The wheels of the carriage could not move because the carriage was so heavy and there was thick mud on the road. 2 horses were trying to pull the carriage, but they could not. The driver was hitting them hard with a whip. "Stop, please," said Joe. "The wheels will not move in this mud." "Be quiet," said the driver rudely. "I can help you take some of the metal from the carriage, then it will move," said Joe. "Go away," said the driver. "I know what I'm doing." He continued to hit the horses. Joe quickly rode me to the factory and found the manager. Joe told him what the man was doing. "Thank you, Joe," said the manager. "I'll deal with the man. Will you tell the police what you saw?" "Yes, I will," said Joe. The manager went to find the carriage with the metal, and Joe went home. He told John what happened. "You did the right thing," said John. We heard later that the police asked Joe about what he had seen. Joe explained very well, and when the police saw the poor horses, they sent the driver to prison for 2 or 3 months. It was wonderful to see the change that came over Joe. He learned from his mistakes to become a very good worker. John was now very pleased with him. "You look taller than you did last week," said John. Soon Joe was singing happily again every day. Unfortunately, Mrs. Gordon became ill again in the years that followed. The doctor said that she should live in a warmer climate. We heard that Squire and Mrs. Gordon were going to leave England. Everybody was very sad. All Squire Gordon's horses were sold to new owners. Ginger and I were the last horses to leave Birtwick Park, and one morning we took Squire Gordon and his wife to the railway station. We never saw them again. Ginger and I found out that we were going to live at Earlshall Park, the home of a rich earl called Smythe. John took us there the next day and told the new helper, a man called York, that we were the best horses they could have. Then John left too. I felt very sad to see him go. I did not realise that my new home with Earl and Lady Smythe would bring new difficulties for Ginger and me.